What time is it? Game time! Hello everybody and welcome to Action RPG. I'm your host Aaron, and for today, finally, Baldurs Gate 3 gameplay. We now know what this game is all about, and I'm going to show you that in a second. But first, if you're new here, welcome. Here at Action RPG, I stream, I do tech reviews, I cover major gaming news, but the big portion of this channel, all things Action RPG. So if you grew up loving the Diablo series, if you're a fan of top-down isometric hack and slash style games, you are in the right place. So please consider subscribing and supporting smaller channels. All right, let's get on to the news, or in this case, the gameplay. As always, I will share my thoughts. Please feel free to share yours in the comment section below. Here we go. Okay, so starting, if you haven't seen the opening cinematic yet for Baldurs Gate 3, watch my last video because it's on there and it's awesome. What you're seeing on screen is how your character starts, which is a continuation of kind of the crash that happens at the end of that, and you'll have to go and see it. So I know you're all here to see the 4K gameplay, so I'm going to let that run now, and as you're watching that, I'm going to be reading through an article from MMORPG titled Baldurs Gate 3 gameplay reminds me of Divinity in the best possible way, and it's written by Joseph Bradford. Creating the next entry in such a storied franchise isn't an easy task. Larian knows the pressure they're under, especially as every member of the development team working on BG3 has, or is currently playing the originals from yesteryear. The franchise is an important benchmark in PC RPGs, its influences stretching to almost every major role-playing game on the platform since their release. We always knew from the beginning that when we started at Baldurs Gate 3 that it was either win or lose, right? Baldurs Gate 3 senior producer David Walgrave told MMORPG at the San Francisco event. The demo started with an incredible, impressive CGI trailer. If you have not watched that yet, please exit this video and watch my last video. I have it up in 4K. Showing off a little bit of the story to come. You're trapped on board, captive by Mind Flayers, intent on, well, having you join their ranks. The Mind Flayer inserts their The Mind Flayer inserts a tadpole which slithers through your eye, latching onto your brain. You too will become a Mind Flayer if it isn't dealt with fast. And you'll see this in the cinematic. Not everything goes as planned, however, as the Mind Flayer are assailed by dragon riders pursuing you through hell. Eventually crashing in the realm, you find yourself waking on a beach on a sword coast. A familiar location, both Baldur's Gate and Dungeons & Dragons fans. It's here we started our journey to figure out there is a way to get this tadpole out of your head. We started our playthrough, and by we, I mean Sven and the founder of Larian Studios, by choosing between multiple pre-made original story characters. As with Divinity, players, you can pick and choose whether to create your own adventures or play as one of the established characters and experience the Baldur's Gate story through their eyes. So you have a vampire spawn with a rogue base class. Baldur's Gate 3 will be allowed full character customization, choosing between 15 different classes and subclasses, as well as 8 separate races, such as elf, human, high elf, drow, and others that Larian hasn't announced yet. The vampire's story is interesting, though. He spent countless years serving as the vampires who enslave him, never allowed to taste the fresh blood of one you can think, constantly subservient to his master's will. Each character you play will have different dialogue options as well. Specifically, the original characters will have their own story responses, but like Divinity, you can choose options to roleplay your character
the way you want. And of course you can, it's D&D after all. Vampire is chaotic evil, so more often than not, we found ourselves making dastardly dialogue decisions, such as allowing a captive to die in front of our eyes, or making the choice to feed on a companion. Visually, Baldurs Gate 3 expands upon the beautiful visuals Larian Games has become known for. Using the Divinity 4.0 engine, the RPG looks like the studio's last title, Divinity Original Sin 2. And that's not a bad thing. It's a beautiful game, and its UI is beautifully laid out on the PC to maximize every inch of your screen. Baldurs Gate 3 looks like it's very much in the same vein, and the whole time it felt like I was watching Divinity gameplay with a 5th edition Dungeons and Dragons rule set. In fact, that was one of the major undertakings of this team, rewriting the engine to accommodate the rule set according to David. So I'll pause there for a minute. So obviously, you know, if you love Divinity Original Sin 1 or 2, you're probably going to love this game. If you love Dungeons and Dragons, the tabletop, or any of the branch-off games that have come from that, you're probably going to love this game. If you're a fan of CRPGs, and if you don't know what that means, it means classic role-playing games, you're probably going to love this game as well. Like, so far it looks really good. To be able to implement the rule set, the D&D rules we basically had to start all over again, because it's so completely different from what we had. We couldn't just plug it in. We took a lot of the systematics, so you can move anything, everything, adheres to a certain law that we put in. This is just a simulation, and it creates so much gameplay almost for free. Stuff like the surfaces is something we're keeping, because that was also basically inspired by a lot of the stuff that goes on D&D. Turn-based combat, we think we've started to get really good at, thanks to Original Sin 1 and 2. We always wanted to make them turn-based, so we're keeping that. So if you didn't catch it yet, this game is a turn-based combat style. You get to make your decisions, and then they make theirs. Like Dungeons & Dragons, you won't be traveling in your adventure alone. As we moved through the Sword Coast, getting our bearings, we came upon multiple characters who could help characters who also are dealing with their own tadpole nightmares. Thanks to the tadpole, though, players have access to an ability called mind melding, allowing you to read the thoughts of other tadpole invested characters. These dialogue options aren't always going to turn out great either, especially if you miss your die roll. We seem to be plagued with a defective die roll during the demo. Depending on your actions in game, either via dialogue or otherwise, your reputation among your party goes up or down. You can build rapport with your party members, like the cleric Shadowheart, whom we first met our journey while camping after a long adventure. So, I mean, the main purpose of this story is you meet people, you all have tadpoles attached to your brain, and you are on an adventure to remove this tadpole from your brain so that you don't turn into a Mind Flayer. That's a pretty basic storyline. Camping isn't anything new to the Baldurs Gate series. Indeed, Baldurs Gate 3 even keeps up the cutscenes you would sometimes encounter during camping in Baldurs Gate before, but Baldurs Gate 3 takes it a step further. You can move around the camping ground, interacting with your party and learning more about them, their stories, as well as what they feel about this current situation. It's a cool way to learn more about the party you travel with. And if you're playing with friends, it can present some very awesome RP moments lost in other RPGs on the market. Combat in Baldurs Gate 3 looks a lot like Divinity, but there is one major difference. So typically, you'd have enemies and teams turned intermingled together, while Baldurs Gate 3 will group your team together in one turn, and then the enemy will take their turn. So normally, and I'll show this kind of combat, a video that shows combat later in this video, but You know, if you have 3 people on your team, you get to pick an action with each one of those people. Then when you're done, it's the other turn's team, and then each one of the people you're fighting against will take a shot at you. The combat itself is still fully turn-based, and while Divinity used action points to determine everything you could do on a turn, BG3 limits you to movement and action. Positioning also matters, and oftentimes Sven was moving around the fray, giving him height advantage with his bow. Characters can also perform special actions such as jumping out of the way if an enemy gets too close, thus preventing them an attack or opportunity as well. Or throw items such as an oil pot to cover the ground, giving you a chance to light it on fire, dealing damage to those caught in the blaze. Vertically positioning, it's all incredibly important, and it makes it some interesting fights. In the final encounter of the demo, we find ourselves fighting in what looks like a rundown tavern. The vampires spent most of the fight in the rafters above the battle like a medieval Overwatch, keeping tabs on enemies and pelting them with arrows. It made me think of the different ways I could approach the fight when I eventually have a chance to check out the game myself. Additionally, Larian wants this to feel like you're playing a traditional D&D game. The mindset was that anything you could do in DM to do, anything you could ask to do, you should be able to do in Baldurs Gate 3. In fact, everything about the presentation screams tabletop as well. For example, critical hits splash a d20 on the screen, and you'll see the passive checks a DM would typically do behind the scenes flash as you explore the world around you. That is really awesome. It really makes BG3 feel like it's rooted in the source material, something that the team at Larian strove from the get-go. We want to have it in there from the beginning, so you really feel a link between not just the 5th edition and the game, but also your character and how you're building it. And because in D&D games there are so many passive checks going on, like the Dungeon Master is rolling behind their little board, and you go, what is he rolling for? We want it to have that feeling. BG3 allows you to also play the game differently than previous entries. There's both the traditional isometric camera we've used to the past, so it's like, you know, that's why people immediately thought like, ooh, they're gonna make this an action RPG. But you can also move the camera into a third-person mode if you want to be closer to the action. Additionally, dialogue is fully voice-acted and presented in a cutscene-like format, making the conversations feel more intimate and animated than ever in the Divinity prior. It's kind of cool in the cutscenes too, like the mouths move. I know it sounds silly, but you don't see that very often. Normally they just talk and they look stupid standing there. One feature I really found interesting, and I can't wait to try myself, is the pause system, or turn-based mode. Pausing the game allows you to plan your moves. This isn't anything new to BG, but it's made more intriguing when you realize you can actually move your character while paused. You have 6 seconds of movement before the rest of the world reacts with their own 6-second timer. This allows you to sneak differently, positioning yourself in a room before engaging in battle. Sven used this mode to great effect, essentially roaming the vampire alone through a fully guarded area, uncovering secrets without being seen. He was also able to use this mode to position before a fight, giving him a sight advantage for the entire encounter. BG3 looks like you're playing a standard D&D campaign from a presentation on screen with the die rolls being shown and performed by the player. To the branching storylines and intricate relationships between both the player and characters and NPCs. I felt like I was watching a D&D campaign by my favorite streamer play out before my eyes. Streamers will benefit from this too, as Sven tells us that while streaming, you can have your audience decide dialogue for you and even roll the dice for you, giving new meaning to the audience participation on Twitch. Wow! I'm going to say that one more time because that is really cool. So obviously while you're streaming, people could comment on there, and you can have dialogues with the people that are watching you play. But on here, like, yeah, as you're interacting, you can have the audience pick what you click on for dialogue and roll the dice for you. Like, man, that is really cool. I really like that. BG3 is a behemoth of a franchise, and whoever took on the next installment of the legendary series was going to be under pressure to do it right. Some might think this means the team at Larian Studios is afraid of changing it up in a meaningful way, of fear of upsetting the series purists, which makes sense. People want it the way it's always been. But David tells me that that's in fact the exact opposite approach. We're trying not to shy away from doing something because we think that we need to dare make certain big choices to be able to make a change. For instance, there are choices that we're making that the audience might not immediately understand, but hopefully when they play the game, they will see, okay, this was actually the correct choice. BG3 will be released in early access as well. Much like Larian's past projects, David mentions that it is invaluable as it will allow the team to get real-time feedback from players as to how the game truly is for them. We're going to early access to get a lot of feedback from players that might tell us this doesn't really work. We're not afraid of changing stuff or trying out stuff, which is a huge thanks and advantage. At the end of the more than 3-hour demo, I was still struck by how much even simply watching it felt like playing Dungeons and Dragons with your friends. The whole group around me laughed whenever we failed a die roll. The battles unfolded in unpredictable ways, even to the surprise of Sven and the rest of the developers in the room. BG3 looks to be on track to be a memorable entry into the towering franchise, and Larian, with the experience of PC RPGs and willingness to innovate even on an established IPs, might be the best studio for the job. We believe that making hard choices are going for something that is more innovative or that people don't expect is the only way that you can grow as a company. If you keep doing the safe stuff, I don't think you're going to be around for very long. And that is the article. I'm sorry, I know it was crazy long, but I just wanted to read through the entire thing, and you got to see the gameplay. And that's going to do it for today. I actually have 2 more BG3 videos that should be coming out either today or tomorrow. We're going to be talking about character creation, and then I'm actually going to show you what combat truly looks like in turn-based. But for now, that is the breakdown and the basics for BG3. Thank you all for watching. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. Aaron, out.